Well, good morning. Grace and peace to everyone. We're very excited today to welcome a special guest among us. Many of us know Mark Wingfield, and so I'm already seeing a lot of conversation taking place here. But in case you don't, Mark Wingfield is the executive director and publisher of BNG, Baptist News Global, a very important news resource for, I think it's important, Mark.
Thank you.
We raise your hand if you read BNG.
All right.
There you go.
Thank you.
Now, they should all be subscribing members, but I'm very grateful for BNG's work and also Mark's collegiality and partnership. Mark is a longtime minister at our sister church, Wilshire Baptist in Dallas, where he continues as a member, but has done incredible work in just frankly telling the truth. And in these times, we're going to be talking about free press in a free society, not only today, this morning, but also I'm going to really be reflecting on that during the sermon later on in worship. But I'm very grateful for Mark's witness, his courage, his willingness to tell the truth, and I'm very impressed at his ability to find out the facts. He must know everybody in Texas because he's always finding out something. So our plan today is basically to have a little conversation. Mark's going to say a few words. I'm going to follow up with a few questions myself, and then we're going to turn it over to one another. Mark's not shy with a microphone, so I suspect we'll be able to fill up the hour together. But in case we don't, in case we do, and we leave you wanting more, the plan is for Mark to stay for worship. He's going to offer a prayer, say a few brief words in worship itself, and then there's going to be a very light reception today up in room 204 following worship, and that's going to be not so much an opportunity for Mark to give presentation, but for folks to be able to connect with Mark and to learn more about BNG if they wish. So I'm so glad that you are all here, and again, Mark, it's such an honor to have you with us.
Thank you. Can y'all hear me? No, I'm not sure this is on.
All right. We're going to get it.
Okay.
Now try it.
Hey, can y'all hear me now?
There we go.
All right, I feel like the Verizon man. Some of y'all are old enough to remember that ad. Come on now. I'm not the only person of a certain age in this room. Thanks to Ryan for the invitation. I'm delighted to be here today. I want to especially recognize two people. I know so many of you already, but I want to pay special tribute to Harriet Harrell, who y'all know, who is one of our longtime board members at BNG and currently serves as the chair of our advancement team. And y'all know Harriet and Paul well here. And then Alan Bean, who also is among you, is one of our regular columnists. And he gets very frustrated with me because I'm sometimes slow in turning his stuff around. Like right now, I have a piece of his that will probably run tonight. So if y'all don't keep me too long here today.
Close the door.
As well. So I thought it might be helpful to you just to tell you a little bit of where I've come from, so that you would understand sort of the journey here. And then I'll make a few comments about the topic at hand, realizing this is technically Bible study. At Wilshire, where I've been a member 26 years, I'll get to the rest of that in a moment, I teach an intergenerational Sunday school class that is meeting right now, well, almost now, and we live stream. And I just finished a 5-month journey through the Minor Prophets, and I had people begging to please finish because you don't like that sometimes. Oh, thank you. You don't like that sometimes. And right now we're working through line by line the Apostles' Creed. And we've made it about 6 words in 3 weeks.
I believe.
I believe. That's what, like, I. Let's talk about I versus we. Let's talk about what the word believe means and what's the scriptural. So we're dissecting this. Literally the first week we got through 2 words, I believe.
I believe.
And so it's been like that. This is how it goes. And my conservative critics are shocked. I have some of those.
Do you have some?
I usually open the Bible and teach exegetically, verse by verse, Sunday school. And they just can't believe that. They really can't believe that a liberal like me knows how to teach the Bible verse by verse, because that doesn't fit the stereotype. So, but part of that's because of where I've come from. So I'm a native Oklahoman, grew up in 2 small towns, well, 1 small town, 1 not small town in Oklahoma. Through 4th grade, I lived in this small town called Cushing. Now, anyone in the oil business knows Cushing because it is the pipeline capital of North America. Every pipeline in North America runs through Cushing, Oklahoma, which is near Stillwater. And my dad worked for an oil company called Kerr-McGee that doesn't exist anymore. And he worked at a refinery there. And my mom was a school teacher. At the time we lived there was population 9,000. But, and here's an interesting point, when I was in 3rd grade, always looking after what the bigger kids were doing at First Baptist Church of Cushing, Oklahoma, we got this summer youth minister intern from Oklahoma Baptist University who just blew the socks off of everyone, and her name was Molly Marshall.
Oh.
So I've known Molly indirectly since I was a 3rd grader.
Multiple seminaries.
Right? And most of y'all know Molly and her history as well.
She has also lost her job, which is a badge of honor here at Broadway in the Southern Baptist Convention. So,
right?
Yeah.
Someone who got run out by Al Mohler, which is indeed a badge of honor.
Yeah.
So, but between my 4th and 5th grade year, my dad took a new job in Oklahoma City. And we moved to a suburb called Moore. So Moore is between Oklahoma City and Norman. At the time, it was the fastest growing city in America. And it was all white people. So growing up in Moore from 5th grade through 11th grade, I did not know a single black person. I did not know a single Jew. My best friend down the street was a Methodist, and we prayed for her eternal soul every Wednesday night at youth group. And I had one friend who was an Irish Catholic, and I didn't even know what to think about her. She lives in Houston today, married, and has a family, and we still keep in touch through Facebook. She's a big supporter. But this is the sheltered world I grew up in. First Baptist Church, Moore, Oklahoma, where, as I like to say, we celebrated 3 religious holidays every year: Christmas, Easter, and the 4th of July, and not necessarily in that order. We were Christian nationalists,
yes,
but didn't know we were Christian nationalists because it was just the water we swam in. As a youth, I sang in all these God and country pageants and everything. Well, after my junior year of high school, my dad hated his job, and he got a new job as a salesman in Albuquerque. And we moved. I'm an only child. We packed up and moved to Albuquerque, which was like huge cultural shock. But you might have noticed I'm an extrovert. And, I walked into this huge high school and sang in the top choir, sang in the show choir, and was co-editor of the yearbook as a new kid. There were 900 people in that graduating class, including my future wife, who I did not know. We met later. Anyhow, here's the important part. Suddenly, I'm from this sheltered world in Oklahoma, living in Albuquerque, where there's Catholics everywhere,
Catholic there,
in case you didn't know. Catholics everywhere. There's Mormons. I met Mormons for the first time in my life in high school there, my senior year. My co-editor of the yearbook, who became a very good friend, was a devout Republican Catholic. And we had lots of arguments about things, right? This was an eye-opening experience for me. So after graduating, I went back to Oklahoma and worked the summer at the church where I'd been working before. And I was supposed to go to OU on a journalism scholarship. But because I'd been out of state for 10 months, they decided I'd have to pay out-of-state tuition. So it was cheaper to go to Oklahoma Baptist University, a private school, than to go to OU, a public school, and pay out-of-state tuition. That's how I ended up at OBU. And that summer I was struggling because there were 2 things that were really important to me in my life. besides church and all that, I was a pretty good pianist, and I was a pretty good journalist, young journalist. And I couldn't figure out what I was supposed to do. But in my 18-year-old anxiety, evangelical anxiety, I decided to go to Scripture. And remember where Paul says, in my weakness, Christ is made strong. Everyone remember that verse? Yeah. So I took it literally. And I sat there and thought, okay, which of these two things am I weakest at? Well, I'm a better journalist than I am a musician, so let me be a music major.
That's a very literal way of approaching the scriptures.
This is the world I grew up in, y'all. This is the way you think, right? And it wasn't that I was bad. I just, so I changed my major the summer before I started college from journalism to piano, and I was a pretty good pianist. And I decided God was calling me to be a minister of music. So I went off to OBU, and there's this woman named Catherine Timberlake. Some of y'all with any connection to OBU will know Catherine Timberlake. Her husband was a religion professor at OBU. And somehow, through the weirdness of God's sense of humor, I tested into the honors theory and ear training class at OBU as a freshman, where I had no business being at all. And everyone I know today who was in that class with me is a professional musician. I am not. There's a reason for this. So Catherine Timberlake showed me the way of God, and that was a rough semester. I went home at Christmas break to Albuquerque, and I was in my parents' den watching TV one afternoon while they were gone, and I was watching the old show Lou Grant. Do any of y'all remember Lou Grant? Right? Ed Asner. He's a salty newspaper. It's a spinoff of Mary Tyler Moore, right?
Oh, yeah.
And one of the few times I have ever heard the voice of God in my ear was that afternoon through Lou Grant. And I had this sudden awareness that that is what I needed to do. That God was not calling me to be a minister of music, but God was calling me to be a journalist, to be a truth teller, to be like Lou Grant and the people. I mean, the fact that God could use a secular TV show to convince me to enter Christian journalism, this is great, right? So it's Christmas break. During the break, I changed my major from music to journalism and go back in January for J-term and start this thing. And the first thing we do in J-term is we make a trip to Fort Worth to go visit the Radio and Television Commission of the Southern Baptist Convention.
Sure.
It was a snowy, icy day. I'll never forget it. And I was on the Southwestern Seminary campus for the first time, not the last time. And the rest sort of made its way. Now, I learned the intricacies of denominational politics right away because we had a president who was under attack. My uncle was a Southern Baptist pastor.
President of the seminary.
President of this university. OBU. Yeah. So I sort of, got into this up front. And then I was home after my sophomore year for the summer, and my parents' pastor called me up one day and said, hey, I want to introduce you to J.B. Fowler, who's the brand new editor of the Baptist of New Mexico, the state Baptist newspaper. And he's looking for a summer intern. And so, okay, we connected, and lo and behold, I got hired as the summer intern to a Baptist preacher turned sudden newspaper editor who knew nothing about running a newspaper. It's a weekly newspaper. He knew nothing. But he needed, and I had 3 semesters of journalism training. And I knew a lot at that point. I mean, I knew about the inverted pyramid, Paul. I knew, I was the most well-educated person in the room on this.
Man bites dog.
Right, it was, absolutely. And as the summer went on, Dr. Fowler called me into his office one day and said, hey, this is going so well, would you consider transferring to UNM, which was right down the street, and working 30 hours a week for me as my assistant editor here? And you know what? Suddenly it made sense. And so part of the reason for this story is way leads on to way, right? As Robert Frost says, way leads on to way. And so I drove back to Oklahoma, picked up all my stuff out of the dorm that was in storage for the summer, drove it back, and started this new adventure in Albuquerque, going to the University of New Mexico, where the single most influential person on my life in journalism training was a man named Tony Hillerman. Some of y'all know Hillerman's books. He was my writing professor at UNM. And there is no one who has shaped me more as a writer than Tony Hillerman. And if you don't know Hillerman's books, go look them up. They're fabulous. He's also a native Oklahoman and was a fabulous, fabulous guy and became a friend to me as well. And he was a typical absent-minded professor, but that's a whole other story, right? But he's someone who believed in me and gave me a chance. And then J.B. Fowler, who had a pastor's heart, is the one who taught me about religious liberty. I knew about journalism more than he did, but he knew about religious liberty and Baptist heritage more than I did. He's one of the people who began leading me out of this fundamentalist mindset I had grown up in. The other was a woman at OBU who was the college minister at First Baptist Shawnee, which at the time was a moderate church. It is not now. Yeah. That's a whole sad story. Her name at the time was Charlotte Weedman. It's now Charlotte Lankard, and she's living in her daughter. One of her daughters is Krista Tippett, who runs the NPR On Being, right? I think it's On Being, right? On Being. Yeah. So Charlotte's one of these people who helped me understand there was a bigger world than I grew up in. That there was more out there. Like, we went to Glorieta one summer, and we went to this Mexican restaurant with our group from First Baptist Shawnee and OBU, and there was a jukebox there, and people started dancing, y'all. Dancing. And like, I couldn't even get up out of the chair because this was totally outside my experience. This is how sheltered I was, right? So at UNM, at Baptist New Mexican, one of the most important things J.B. Fowler did for me was he introduced me to a man named James Dunn and the Baptist Joint Committee. It was the time Baptist Joint Committee on Public Affairs, now Baptist Joint Committee for Religious Liberty. Yeah. I had no idea this place existed. I had no idea the Baptist heritage on First Amendment issues. And it just opened my world wide, right? And so the second most important thing J.B. Fowler did for me, and I've written about all this before, some of you read this. I was going to come to Southwestern Seminary here in Fort Worth. It was the winter, it was December of 1984 when I graduated from UNM. I was coming in, starting January term. If y'all remember January 1985 in Fort Worth, it was cold here. And I somehow got here without even a jacket. I don't know what I was thinking, but anyhow. Dr. Fowler called me into his office, and he always had Adventures in Good Music with Carl Haas playing in the background on public radio. And that was in the background at this moment I'm about to describe. And he said, Mark, what's it going to cost for your first semester of seminary? And some of y'all who are old-time seminary folks here will know it was not a lot, but in that day it was $300. But to me, $300 was a whole lot of money as a 22-year-old, right? And he reached in the drawer of his desk, pulled out his personal checkbook, and wrote me a check for $300. And he said, Wanda and I want to want to give this to you to get you started in seminary. And that was an act of generosity I've never forgotten from someone who believed in me and wanted to help me. And so I tell that story as often as I can, because you never know what those small acts of generosity that you do are going to do for someone else along the way. I landed at Southwestern, and due to those connections that I had, it's all about connections, y'all, I ended up being a news writer in the public affairs office. It was a great experience. I met new people. I met some of y'all as well. And a year later, my boss left to go to work for the Annuity Board in Dallas, and suddenly I was the full-time director of news and information at Southwestern Seminary and a part-time student instead of being flipped, right? And so I did that for the next 2 years and made all sorts of wonderful memories and connections. And then ultimately, I got recruited by Jim Newton, who was the director of news information at the SBC Home Mission Board in Atlanta. I'd gotten married in the meantime, and we moved to Atlanta. And I didn't finish my seminary degree. I had completed 66 hours toward what was then, in those days, an 88-hour Master of Divinity degree. And I thought, okay, we'll move to Atlanta. I was in conversation with Nancy Ammerman at Emory, and I was going to finish my MDiv there. Well, I got working for the Home Mission Board, got traveling at least a week every month, and it was just impossible to do. And life moved on, and I didn't finish. Now, I think I have the equivalent of a PhD in experience, but that's another story. We moved to Atlanta, and we ended up joining a church called Dunwoody Baptist in North Atlanta, and the pastor at the time was someone you might know, a guy named Daniel Vestal. And this was during the time in the SBC battles when Daniel twice ran for SBC president. And just so happens I was there, a part of this at that time. Well, working for the Home Mission Board was the best possible experience in the worst possible time. It was a great job, horrible circumstances. Larry Lewis had just come as president. The whole place was in turmoil. Literally the month before I got there, a female trustee fell over dead in a trustee meeting, had a heart attack. Some of y'all may remember that story. That's how bad things were. And I walked right into that. It was a miserable job. Miserable time, great job. Great friends as well. Traveled the country, writing, it was great. But I couldn't sustain it. And the Atlanta Journal-Constitution had an opening for a religion writer. And Gus Niebuhr, who some of y'all remember Gus, was leaving there to go either to the Wall Street Journal or the New York Times or something like that. And I interviewed with them, I bet 5 times. And they just couldn't make a decision about whether they were going to fill that job or not. I needed out. I needed something new to do. And in the meantime, my dear friend, Marv Knox, had gone to Kentucky to become editor of the Western Recorder. And he called me up and said, I need an associate editor. Would you come to Kentucky? And again, here's one of those moments where if life had taken me this way, it would have been a different story. If life had taken me this way, as it did, it was a different story. And I end up in Kentucky, land in Louisville, just as Southern Seminary is going through chaos. Within a year of my arrival there, Roy Honeycutt announces his retirement, and we get Al Mohler as president. And Diana Garland becomes a good friend, and I'm the one who wrote the stories about the Carver School of Social Work imploding there, covered all of that, covered all the changes at Southern Seminary. So I've been at Southwestern as Ralph Pulley and these folks are hammering Russell Dilday. I see that up front. I'm at the Home Mission Board as chaos is ensuing. I get to Louisville, chaos is ensuing in this, and I get to meet these people and report on this. And then I become editor of the Western Recorder for a period of years because my good friend Marv Knox leaves to come to Texas. And I swore I would not be the minister of music who follows the pastor around, but it turned out that I did, and that's a whole nother story I won't go into, but I ended up in Texas as the managing editor of the Baptist Standard. And that's how that was 26 years ago. And Marv and I worked together for 5 years, and we joined, my wife and I, Allison, and our kids, we joined Wilshire at that time. And I became very active as a lay leader in the church. I was not ordained on purpose at this point. Became very active as a lay leader and involved in all sorts of things. And one day I was driving to Baylor to cover another one of those Board of Regents meetings during the Sloan era. So y'all remember this. And like I just kept I-35 hot during those days. And I'm driving down and my cell phone rings and it's George Mason. And he says, Mark, I have something I want to ask you and you've got to promise me you'll at least pray about it before you say no. And some of y'all know Phil Strickland as well,
yeah, I know.
right? Phil Strickland was head of the Texas Christian Life Commission. It was a long-time member. At the time, he was chair of the Personnel Committee at Wilshire. And he said, Phil Strickland and I and the Personnel Committee have been talking. We need a successor to our associate pastor, and we need to make a change in how that role is structured, and we think you're the one. Well, I nearly wrecked sorry, I almost used a bad word there. I nearly wrecked the car driving. I can tell you the exact spot on I-35 where I got that call. I can see every time I go by there, I see it, I think about it. because in my heart, I knew I needed to make a change again, but I didn't know what it would be. I knew there was something, and I had thought in my heart, well, God, what else could I do? I'd love to be on staff at Wilshire, but that would never happen because I didn't finish seminary. What would I do? With that associate pastor, that would be fabulous. That would fit me really well. But that would never happen because A, B, and C, right? And here's George on the phone, again, almost like it was the second time in my life I heard the voice of God. And I knew this was the right thing to do. And so that launched a 16-and-a-half-year career as the associate pastor, executive pastor at Wilshire, which was, as you know, transformative in so many ways in that time. George and I worked together half of his tenure at Wilshire. And we remain very good friends to this day. I see him a lot. And then Harriet and the B&G board called when there was a need, and I was on the board. And again, I'm driving to Austin. What is it about I-35, y'all? I don't know.
You're often stuck there. If
Yeah,
you're
I know. There's time to meditate. And so I'm talking to Janice Anderson, who was the chair of our board at the time, a member at South Main in Houston. And she's explaining this to me. And again, I'm driving down I-35, and I hear the voice of God confirm to me this. I didn't want to do this. I didn't want to be a journalist again. I never thought I'd be a journalist again. And here I am. The moment is there. It's the opportunity. And this is what God is saying you need to do. And I'm not a mystic in this way, but I felt certain this was the right thing to do, even though it was one of the most painful decisions of my life to do. And not knowing that, y'all, this was February of 2020. And we did not know what was going to happen the next month. And yet, all this worked out. And here I am again. And the reason I tell you this whole story is one of the reasons I can do what I do today is I know where the bodies are buried. These SBC leaders, CBF leaders, I was there for all of it. Like many of you, I was present at the creation of CBF. I was at the first pre-meeting. I was at the founding meeting. I was at all those things, right? And I know all the SBC folks. And I know Southwestern Seminary, which is why I'm able to go over there today and have a conversation with folks that allows me to have access to things that someone else wouldn't. And isn't that an ironic God's sense of humor to bring me on this weird journey? Oh, and I forgot the one part that would have been another turning point. You're going to love this. When I was at the Home Mission Board, I became chatty with this pastor. Oh, actually, I met him when I was at Southwestern Seminary. I wrote the very first national news story about a guy named Rick Warren and Saddleback Church. He was on campus, and my supervisor at the time said, I want you to get in a car with this young pastor named Rick Warren and interview him as someone else drives you to DFW for him to catch a flight. So I had 45 minutes in the car with Rick Warren and wrote the first story nationally about Saddleback. And we sort of stayed in touch. And here's the fun part. I'm in Atlanta, and Rick Warren wants to hire me to be his communications person at Saddleback. Can you imagine the different path my life would have been if that happened? Thankfully, my wife...
Hawaiian shirts.
Right, yeah. My wife said, I will not live in Southern California. So this is how we are. So all of this is to say, I come to this work with a deep passion that is rooted in several things. It is rooted in Scripture, because I have been raised in a place that values Scripture. And what I've come to realize today is you don't have to abandon the Bible to be a progressive.
That's right.
You do not have to deny the reality of Scripture. So when it comes to, for example, women in ministry, you can make a biblical case for women in ministry. You do not have to lay the Bible aside. I do not have to abandon that belief. LGBTQ inclusion, you do not have to abandon the Bible to do that. You don't have to do cartwheels and some convulsions to do that. You can make a case for that. And this is where, again, way leads on to way in this. But also, I learned from an early age that in Baptist life, truth-telling matters.
Yes.
Truth-telling, because we are a church that is built on democratic, lowercase d, principles. Congregational governance, unless you're a member at Second Baptist Houston. That's another story. congregational governance. This is what we're about. And you cannot make good decisions if you're not informed. And so I grew up as a kid. I was that nerdy kid who read the State Baptist paper in Oklahoma, the Baptist Messenger. Like, it came to our home, and I read it every week. And like, no one else in my youth group was doing that but me, right? And I kept up with Baptist stuff as a teenager because I knew it mattered. And this is how we are where we are today, because one of the previous editors of the Baptist Standard had this great line that's famous now about why he did what he did. Trust the Lord and tell the people.
Yep.
Trust the Lord and tell the people. There is no danger in telling people truth as they're needing to make up their mind on what the Spirit, because you know what? We've learned this interesting thing. The Spirit speaks to us more clearly when we are informed. It's like you do better on tests when you've studied. It's a miracle, right? So when you know something about what's going on, the Spirit can speak to you more clearly. And that's what we're about. We want you to have the facts. We want you to know. And sometimes it's ugly. Sometimes it's horrible. I've got some Nazarenes right now who are all over me and really hate me for an article I wrote last week about how they're running out professors and pastors who are inclusive. And what am I doing meddling in their business? Well, here's the problem. The Church of the Nazarene is following the steps of the SBC, but they have no news organization that writes about them. None. And so it's got to take some Baptists to go connect the dots along the way, which is what we're doing with other denominations when you find the trends and you report on those. And suddenly, as I like to say, Baptist News Global is not just for Baptists anymore, because the world is not segmented by denominations in that way. And out of the parochial world I grew up in, where only Southern Baptists were going to heaven, I prayed for my Methodist friend for her eternal salvation. I knew no Jews, I knew no blacks, I knew no Hispanics, right? Out of that world, God has brought me into a broader awareness of the world, and that's how we get here today. So, Ryan.
Told Mark, can you take about 10 minutes? I think we did well to just be engaged.
That was
with
more
Mark's.
than 10 minutes.
It was more than 10 minutes, but
Sorry.
We've got some incredibly experienced journalists actually in the room. Paul Harrell is here, former editor of the Star-Telegram. Kristen Sullivan is a former reporter for the Star-Telegram. Irie Price was a former reporter for the Lubbock Avalanche Journal in a life long ago. She was called as the religion reporter, and then they transferred her to crime. So,
is there really a difference?
It was just the same characters. One's a night shift, the other's a night. But
Love it.
But I want to turn over to just having conversation about kind of newsworthy events, but I wish that before we do that, you would just comment. You've talked about the BJC, the First Amendment that's going to appear in the sermon today, free exercise of religion, free press, free right to assembly, all of those essential core freedoms that we espouse. Talk just for a moment about being a journalist in this particular moment in American history.
So, y'all, I'm 63 years old. I'll be 64 in December. My plan was to retire at the end of next year when I turn 65. Donald Trump has changed that plan. I do not want to give up this platform. I do not want to give up this fight right now because it's too important. This is a moment in which we need truth tellers. We need folks who really will highlight what's going on. And we're just one small cog in that, y'all. We're just one piece of the puzzle, but it takes all those pieces right now, because this is a moment in which in the church and in the nation, truth has been thrown out the window.
Right.
And I will recommend to you my latest book that's published by Fortress called Honestly Telling the Truth About the Bible and Ourselves. You can get it at Amazon or anywhere. It's usually on the clearance rack now, but anyhow. It goes into and makes a biblical case for telling the truth, and understanding the Bible truthfully as well. And part of the problem, to your point, is the church has accommodated itself to lies politically because we've accommodated ourselves to lies about the Bible. Y'all, this week is the 100th anniversary of the Scopes trial in Tennessee. 100 years. And sometimes I think we have not made much progress in 100 years because some of the same arguments that were made in that trial are still being trotted out today. Yeah. And if you read the polling data, most evangelical Christians do not believe evolution is real. They also do not believe climate change is real. Right. But yet they swear they live by the inerrant Bible. And I just have a problem with that, that the people, Ken Paxton, who want to post the 10 Commandments in every classroom cannot live by the 10 Commandments. Right? So you're wanting to force on other people something you cannot do yourself. And by the way, Ken Paxton is a Southern Baptist. He's a member at Prestonwood in Dallas, a very prominent member there as well. So there's this hypocrisy. Is the hypocrisy that... Any of y'all do the Enneagram?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. In case you haven't figured it out, I'm an Enneagram 8, strongly, like all the way. And social justice, advocacy, being passionate about these things, this is really inherent to who I am. And isn't it wonderful that God used that way that I was made to put me in a place to be able to do this?
For just such a time as this.
Well, I don't think I'm an Esther, but okay.
Well, I think we just want to have conversation. We can obviously go anywhere. We have a microphone. I see a hand up over here. I think Lester's going to give me a help. I should have said this at the outset. This is being recorded. I should have told Mark that, but
not the first time.
We're live streaming it, so we do want to use the microphone so that folks online can hear, and also there are a few of us in the room that helps also.
Hey.
Do you know from your writing and studying, can you tell us the history of why people became fixated on public monuments to the 10 Commandments versus the New Testament? Like, I really have been thinking about this. Like, why don't Christians focus on what Jesus said versus the Old Testament?
So this is a great question. If you didn't hear, it's about one example is why are some Christians fixated on the Old Testament more than the New Testament, right? So, and the 10 Commandments, right? Well, why not? I mean, I would rather post the Beatitudes, y'all, right? That would be a lot more good if we're going to post something. But I don't think you ought to post any of that. Anyhow, go back to BJC, First Amendment. This is a fascinating question. And Ryan, I had a preacher friend say to me, there's two comments from preacher friends in my younger days that have stuck with me. One was a pastor who said to me, preachers preach two kinds of sermons. Some preachers preach answers, and some preachers preach questions. And the best sermons are always the questions, not the answers. But then the second thing was, I began to notice that there are pastors and preachers who love Paul in the New Testament and hate the Gospels, and there are those who love the Gospels and hate Paul. And then there are those who love the Old Testament law selectively. I guarantee you do not want to live by the holiness code in Leviticus. Your life's going to be miserable, but you can cherry pick that, right? And there is this sense of order to some people in the Old Testament because it's very structured. It's very hierarchical. And what they find there that they don't find in the Gospels is order. And to the conservative mind in particular, there is a need, there is a desire for structure. And so the 10 Commandments, it's a list. Y'all, I mean, one of the things we learn in publishing is something called a listicle, right? I mean, you remember BuzzFeed? This is what made BuzzFeed work. It was lists of everything. Right, 10 things this, 15 things. And here's something I've learned from publishing in the last 5 years. If you put a number in the headline of an article, you're going to get a lot more clicks. 5 things you need to know about this. 10 things about this. People love lists. And the 10 Commandments is the perfect, idealized list. But it's not only the 10 Commandments, it's Genesis. There is this need, and I agree Genesis, is important. But a literal reading of Genesis sort of informs all this as well. Scopes trial again. Yeah.
I'm going to change my sermon title to 3 Things You Need to Know About the First Amendment.
It's going to help your clicks, I guarantee it.
Go ahead, Judge Hill.
I was just wondering how you're viewing the change that's attempted to be made on the First Amendment regarding the religion.
Yes.
In making it apply to those that use religion to go after other groups.
Yes, fabulous question.
And I just wanted to hear what you had to
Yeah,
say
no,
about that.
absolutely fabulous question. So,
Really important
in case you all need a briefer on the First Amendment, government shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or pertaining or limiting the free. I'm messing it up. Limiting the free exercise. So there's 2 clauses: the Establishment Clause and the Free Exercise Clause.
These people are going to choir, by the way, Mark.
Okay.
They're not protesting.
Oh God, I
so-
thought you didn't like the First
Yeah,
Amendment.
yeah.
Okay. I mean, I have had people walk out on me before. Even while officiating a funeral, y'all, I've had people leave. I had one man stand up and challenge me in a funeral.
Wow.
And accuse me of not telling these people the truth because I wasn't talking about hell enough. So you got these 2
I
clauses.
think I know him.
Probably a member here, right? Former member here, maybe.
Former.
Yeah. So you got these 2 clauses, and is the balance between these 2 that matters, not establishing one religion over another by the government and allowing always the free exercise of religion. But what the conservatives want and have wanted forever is to elevate the free exercise clause above the establishment clause, because they have no problem. In fact, they will tell you they believe the clear reading of the First Amendment is not what was meant by the founders. That what they meant was that the government should not tell the church what to do, but the church is free to tell government what to do. Mm-hmm. It is a one-way street, not a two-way street. And so in their mind, free exercise trumps, sorry for the pun, trumps everything. And this is why you have this crazy case in Washington State a year or 2 ago, where you have this part-time assistant football coach who wants to lead prayer at the 50-yard line after these high school JV games, and all of the students feel compelled to be there because he's the assistant coach, right? And the Supreme Court literally believes a lie because they are not given all the right facts in the testimony, and they are told this is voluntary. Well, it was not. I mean, does your kid go to bed voluntarily? No. Right? It's the same thing. So there's this peer pressure involved, and it's all because the Supreme Court said we value the free exercise of religion, even though the school district is establishing a religion. And so the whole movement right now is to throw out the Establishment Clause, elevate the Free Exercise Clause, and it turns everything upside down. It is a check without a balance.
Great question. Really important right now. Of course, just this week we had news about the administration's or IRS saying that they will no longer enforce the Johnson Amendment, which precludes endorsements from the pulpits. I wouldn't trust that as far as I could throw that kind of statement, but we know that gives further license to so many churches.
Well, it does, but here's the problem. We have a whole conversation about the history of the Johnson Amendment because it originated here in Texas with LBJ. The problem with the Johnson Amendment is it's never been enforced by the IRS.
Right.
There's only one time they attempted to enforce it, and it was so messy, they said, oh, we're not doing that again. So it is a law with no teeth to it. But now we've just thrown away the law. We've said it doesn't matter because, and here's what's interesting. There are folks on the left and the right who benefit from this.
Yeah.
It is not only the evangelical church on the right, but it's the black church on the left.
Yeah.
That has this long history. I'm just stating the truth here. I'm not making a judgment on it. Long history of bringing candidates into worship and endorsing them, just as Prestonwood, for example, or First Baptist Dallas.
I just want to make a comment on that. Is the law was not done away with.
Right.
So it could actually be selectively still used to persecute churches that are not of your political persuasion. And so that's something to be very cautious and aware of. That would be capricious and arbitrary in the way that it's being weaponized. But I don't think we're beyond that in 2025.
I mean, we're not beyond anything now. You got a question over here.
This time is going fast.
Because I talk so much.
No, well, it's interesting.
Yeah, thank you for being here, Mark. So there are a couple of issues, a couple of gates between truth and action on that truth. First is that people have to hear it. They have to read and understand what's actually happening. And, of course, the research shows that false stories, made-up stories, bad news, travels multiple times as fast as good stories. And then there are a whole group of people who just refuse or decline or are not exposed to it at all. Is there a way to cross those two gates? What could we do to help get truth out, and what can we do to help get it in front of people who are not trying to listen? So
again, a fabulous question. A friend of mine was giving me a lecture 2 days ago about the major problem that we deal with in the world today in church and politics is indifference. Too many people are indifferent. It's not that they're doing the wrong thing. They just don't care that other people are doing the wrong thing. They're not willing to stand up and fight that, oppose it, or whatever. They are indifferent to it. And this, I think, goes against all the prophets in the Bible. It goes against the words of Jesus. You cannot see injustice in the world and not speak up. That is as biblical an idea as you're going to find anywhere. And yet, there's this, it's not affecting me yet, so I'm not going to worry about it. Second thing, I cannot overstate to you the damage that has been done in America by Fox News. Just the pervasive narrative. The gym I go to, sometimes I'm sitting on the exercise bike, and there's those big TVs up there in front of me, and the way they do it, they've got Fox News here and CNN next to it. I can watch them both at the same time. And I sometimes nearly fall off the bike because some big thing can be going on in the world, and one of them's covering it and the other's not. Or like you watch The Crawler, like I can't even hear it, and I know what's going on just by what they're doing. And one screaming about this, the other. But Fox News has twisted the narrative, and y'all, you know this. There are lots of folks among us who leave the TV on all day long in their home, and it just soaks in, right? I'll quote scripture again. Out of the overflow of the heart, the mouth speaks. It's Proverbs, right? This is what's happening when you get saturated in this kind of lie. And now we have One American News and all these other outlets as well that just add this on and on. And so part of the answer is we've got to help people pull away from obsessive listening to talk. I mean, the other thing is talk radio, y'all. We just cannot, I can't emphasize again to you enough how influential talk radio has been on the right. And the left has no alternative, no real answer to any of this. But we got to get people, what drives me crazy is people who say, oh, well, I did all my research on that. I'm well informed. Well, no, I mean, when you're researching the wrong dictionary, you're going to come up with the wrong answer, right?
Informed citizens. that was from one of his track sessions. But the problem is that they're so ensconced, and there's a whole community. You have to, for someone there to disagree, they have to disagree with not only the news feed, but their whole community, because the whole community buys into that feed.
Yeah. So to your point, Fox News and its offshoots, just like Trump himself, are not ideological to begin with. They are meeting a felt need. They are reinforcing a narrative that people want to believe. And this is why people go to these churches as well. This is why, y'all, here's the problem. None of these conservative pastors I know are very good preachers at all. There's just not a lot of good in fact, one of my conservative friends said to me the other day, my SBC friends, Ben Cole, who does the podcast with me. He said, you know, when the moderates left the SBC, they took all the good preachers with them. And, I mean, that's just true, right? That's not what's bringing people into these churches. What's bringing them in is an ideological reinforcement of what they want to believe. And how do we break out of that? I don't know, because if I knew the answer, I'd like be doing it. I think information is part of it, but it is hard to get people out of a cult with information.
Yeah.
Paul has a question.
Okay.
Or another one back here.
We've got probably, Paul, go ahead. Maybe, Debbie's got a
Debbie's
question
got a question.
first, and she's
Hey.
got the microphone, so there you go. We'll go to Paul after that, and that'll probably be about as much time as we have. But let me remind everyone, we are going to have an opportunity to have more engagement with Mark following worship. Go ahead, Debbie.
I'd like to encourage you, because I'm continually shocked at the way our leaders treat reporters and journalists. Like yesterday, I think I heard a reporter asked Trump a question that he didn't want to answer, and so he said, "This is an evil man. This man is a woman, evil woman." And I'm sure he knows about that. Anyway, but so he calls her a name. He's very, very personal in attacks toward journalists.
Yes.
So does that change your behavior, knowing
It just makes me meaner. Yeah, it's a great question, because what we've seen in Trump is what other people have wanted to do but weren't brave enough to do because no one else could do it, right? And he is a name-calling, nickname-giving, just bully. The man is the epitome of a narcissistic bully. And why evangelical Christians lap this up says more about their character than anything. It's horrifying, right? And yet journalists are indeed under attack today. But you know what? The worst thing you can do to try to silence a journalist is to attack them. It's like saying sick them to a dog, right? The more you come after me, the more I'm going to dig, right? This is what we do. You don't back down because of that. If you did, you wouldn't be in this role, right? And so this is why, it's also why I'm so supremely dismayed in the corporate parents of ABC News and CBS News for capitulating to these frivolous lawsuits because of corporate interest. And this is, again, a whole other subject. The problem with big corporations owning news outlets.
Yeah.
Because they do not have journalistic principles, they have business principles. And when you think of the news as business, you're in trouble.
Mark, you're preaching the sermon I had planned for later on.
You'll illustrate it beautifully, I'm sure.
Yes, okay.
Yeah, embroider it.
Yeah, all right, go ahead.
This is probably moot at this time, but I would say I think of it not as confirmation bias, but as search for certainty. In an uncertain climate, people look for certainty, and they accept it. It happens by coincidence many times to match their bias, but it is not necessarily what's taking place.
Yeah, so Paul, this point is, this is a great place to end, because this is where religious belief and political belief merge. If you are on a quest for certainty in your life and you do not deal well with the gray, if you need black and white on everything, you're going to have a literal reading of the Bible, and you're going to go to a political system that gives you the certainty that you need, that tells you exactly what you want. And there's just a tremendous overlap in this ideology that affects our religion. So I've written this recently, there is no difference between a constitutional originalist and a biblical inerrantist. It is the same thing on two different documents. To say that the Bible is inerrant and can only be read in the way it was originally intended, to deny the work of the Spirit, to deny the words of Jesus, all of that is the same thing as to say, well, we can only read the Constitution as it was intended in the 18th century. I think that's nuts, right? That the river moves on, y'all. The river moves on, and we are going with it. And it's two different worldviews that it drives me insane with that, but that's where we are.
Wow.
Yeah.
Please join me in thanking Mark for being with us. As was said earlier, Mark's going to join us for worship, bring greetings from BNG, say a prayer, and then there will be an opportunity for more one-on-one engagement upstairs in room 204. Just a very light reception. Please don't fill yourselves up too much, but it's an opportunity following worship and before we go to lunch to connect more deeply with Mark if we would like. Next week, I will be gone. I'll be attending the choir tour, the youth choir tour, chapel choir tour, and youth mission trip to Charleston. But we will have with us, Mark mentioned earlier, the Baptist Joint Committee. We will have with us from BJC, Lisa Jacob, who is the North Texas field organizer for Christians Against Christian Nationalism. So that we're really building on all of these things go hand in hand. We have to know the truth, know what's going on, and then we organize to act, and that will be what next week is about as we are continuing to partner with that campaign, both here in North Texas and also nationally. So they're doing great work as well. So very grateful for BJC and also for BNG and everything that you do, Mark. And our prayers are with you. We'll see you in worship.
That went great.